Get your CGR shirts and glassware at ClassicGameRoom.com. Classic Game Room is brought to you by Magnum Skywolf. CGR is supported by fans on Patreon. Thank you. Welcome to Classic Game Room for the review of one of my favorite games on Sega Mark III. It's Opa Opa, which is also known as Fantasy Zone The Maze for the Master System, and yes, it's amazing! When Classic Game Room Mark III launched in early 2016, I celebrated by treating myself to a couple Mark III games that I did not have, including Fantasy Zone 1 and 2, and this one, Opa Opa, for the Sega Mark III, which is known as Fantasy Zone The Maze elsewhere. You can see that it doesn't really resemble the other Fantasy Zone games. In fact, it looks kind of odd. You're flying the Opa Opa spaceship, hero of Fantasy Zone, through mazes, collecting dots, so it's like a Pac-Man clone featuring one of Sega's best mascots, right? No, it's way more than that. Love the drum roll. This is one of the best games that you can get for your Sega Mark III or Master System. You won't leave this review without wanting a copy. Thankfully, it's pretty cheap. Opa Opa, or Fantasy Zone The Maze, is a brilliant reimagining of the Fantasy Zone formula in the Pac-Man universe. And it took me a while to figure this game out. For starters, I think you need to appreciate Fantasy Zone, the ultra incredible, adorable side-scrolling spaceship shooter from Sega. If you haven't played Fantasy Zone, you really won't get what's going on here. You score bonus points by getting through the mazes quickly, but the real challenge is surviving. Because in Fantasy Zone, which plays a lot like Defender, you're shooting bases that spawn enemies. In Opa Opa, the bases are like the ghosts in Pac-Man, except you can destroy them, and you want to destroy them before they fill the maze with fast-moving bad guys. Because they spawn enemies. It's brilliant, but you have to buy all of your weapons, and you've only got so much money. You don't just get power pellets for free in Opa Opa, you need to invest wisely. You earn gold by eating the dots on the maze, obviously, but also by destroying enemies. And there's bonus rounds in between worlds. But like Fantasy Zone, the more that you buy, the higher the price. And the weapons only last so long, so it's best to play as far through the game without buying anything as you can, but you definitely need to buy some lasers from time to time, because if you don't clear out the bases, you won't survive. Especially once the game gets hard. This level in particular took me a while to figure out. You've got to play it aggressively. Do not let the enemies begin to spawn. Now, you may have noticed that red dot in the middle of the screen as well. That's important. Hitting that will stop enemies from respawning, but be careful, you can also easily run into them. There's so much going on in this game. Sure, it's maybe a Pac-Man clone, but it's a Pac-Man clone in the Fantasy Zone. Which is like the complete opposite of whatever horror takes place in the R-Zone. Now that red super power-up is the best one in the game, but it's expensive, especially if you buy it more than once. And you've got to be careful not to accidentally buy things that you don't want more than once, or you'll find yourself without any gold, and then you're screwed. Here's one of the bonus mazes where you can score some extra gold. The fact is, the more you play Opa Opa, the more you'll get the feel for each of the mazes in each of the worlds. And you'll develop some strategies so that you don't have to constantly buy weapons, because they add up fast. And that's one of the things I like about this game. There's 1,000,001 different ways to score points in Opa Opa. No two games ever play even remotely the same. Now, let's get to the next part of this review, which is the controller that you'll need to play Opa Opa. You'll want a good one, and there's not many options available on the Master System and Sega Mark III. Greatest Sega Mark III controller on Earth right here. The Allen 9000. Made by Allen. Woo! I've been playing this with an arcade quality joystick from my friend Alan in West Virginia. Here's a look at it. We dubbed it the Allen 9000. No! No! Search for that guy on eBay. If you don't have one of those, you'll want the best Master System or Mark III gamepad that you can find because you need a good controller for Opa Opa, especially when the enemies start moving really fast. Now, each of my games always ends the same way. At some point, I run out of money, and without weapons, there's just no way to survive the later levels. You can't afford anything, and then you're doomed. So, mastering the early levels is critical. This game is amazing. You absolutely want a copy of Opa Opa or Fantasy Zone: The Maze. Super highly recommended. We all need a trip to the Fantasy Zone every now and then. Yes! If you're going to buy the game anyway, buy it through ClassicGameRoom.com. Classic Game Room is supported by fans on Patreon. Thank you. Now prepare for the Lord Carnage Club, where I celebrate these backers on Patreon by shouting their name in a volcano! Derek Langley. Beer is the trick. Stephen Chucknick. From New Jersey! Michael Fernandez! People not named Michael Fernandez aren't Michael Fernandez. Al Stiver! Woo! EDM! Jason from British Columbia. Philip Strabenmuller from Vienna, Austria. Cue the thunder. Jeff, Captain Dauntless, Breyer. Cue the lava. I don't know what lava sounds like. It sounds like this. Jack Stavris from Australia. Ohad Kane, Master of Thunder. Chip Sankvale, Fighter of Space Bees. Woo! Rick DeBarros gets the extra disco. Michael and Ariana Nelson, Fighters of the Future. That's enough disco, because now it's time to shout, Busy Signal! That's right, and keep the volume loud, and the party rocking for... Sean Zoltek. Really? No. Sean Zoltek! Sergio Matthias Hergert! Tubular. Will.